And our final 5 minutes apiece in, if they wish it, they don't have to have it, but if they do, off you go. 5 minutes to round it up before we have our discussion.
All right, let's try to draw together the threads of this debate in my closing statement. You remember I said I was going to defend two contentions tonight. First, that there's no good reason to think that belief in God is false. And I don't think that we've heard any good arguments against the existence of God tonight. What about this claim that in the absence of evidence for God, you're justified in thinking there is no God? And he gives the example of the kangaroo and the teapot. You see, the failure of those illustrations is that the reason we don't believe that I'm a kangaroo is not because of the absence of evidence that I am a kangaroo. Rather, it is the presence of evidence that I am not a kangaroo. Like, we have good evidence that I'm Homo sapiens. Similarly, the teapot example also fails, because the reason we don't think there's a teapot in orbit around the Earth is not because of the absence of evidence for such a teapot. It's because we have good evidence that no such piece of china has been launched into space by us, or that extraterrestrials have put it there. So it is the presence of contrary evidence. But tonight we've heard no contrary evidence against the existence of God. And so this is just an elementary logical point. A proposition is not shown to be false by the absence of evidence for it. The proposition could still be true in the absence of evidence for it. We just wouldn't know if it's true. Now, I've tried to fulfill my share of the burden of proof tonight and give evidence for God's existence. But all Dr. Wolpert has offered against God is that God needs a creator. I don't think I need to repeat the argument here. Everything that begins to exist has to have a cause. But a timeless, necessary, self-existent being cannot be caused. It would be incoherent, logically, to say God has a cause. So I think we've got good arguments tonight for the existence of God, the fine-tuning in the universe, objective moral values. Just because the resurrection of Jesus occurred 2,000 years ago doesn't mean the evidence is unreliable. What is crucial is not the time gap between the evidence and today. Good evidence doesn't become bad evidence just by receding into the past. What is crucial is the time gap between the events recorded and the first records of them. And as long as that time gap is short, it doesn't matter how far they are from the past. Good evidence doesn't become bad evidence simply by receding into the past. He says, well, it goes against science. Not at all. What science tells us is what lies within the natural capacities of nature. And it is certainly naturally impossible that someone should rise from the dead. That is to say, if Jesus rose from the dead, it must have been a miracle. And that's why I say it's evidence for the existence of God. Finally, let me conclude by saying just one more thing about the personal experience of God. I want you to know that I myself wasn't raised in a Christian home or even a church-going family. But when I became a teenager, I began to ask the big questions in life. Why am I here? What's it all about? And I began to search for meaning in life. And as I did so, I began to read the New Testament. And I was absolutely captivated by the person of Jesus of Nazareth. There was a ring of truth about his words that I had never encountered before, and an authenticity about his life that was just undeniable. And after a period of about 6 months of the most intense soul searching that I've ever been through, I just came to the end of my rope and I cried out to God. And I've experienced this tremendous infusion of joy. And God became a living reality to me, a reality that I've walked with now day by day, year by year, for over 30 years. A reality that I believe you can find too if you will simply seek him with an open mind and with an open heart. So I'd encourage you, if you're here tonight and you're seeking to find God as a personal reality in your life, do what I did. Pick up a New Testament. Begin to read it. And as you go home this evening, you're lying in bed awake before you fall asleep, ask yourself, could this really be the truth? Could the truth about reality be far more wonderful than I ever dreamt or imagined? Could there really be a God who loves me and has given his Son for me that I might know him? Don't miss that. If that is true, it is the greatest news ever announced. So I would encourage you to do the same thing I did. Begin to search, begin to look, and ask God to reveal himself to you. I believe that it can change your life in the same way that it changed mine.
As I said when I started, I'm slightly nervous about trying to persuade you to give up your belief in God. Not that I have any illusions that I will be able to do that, because I think it really does help you, and I think that the basis for your belief is the comfort that it actually does provide you with. Nevertheless, as a scientist looking at the world, one must never be frightened to look at the world as it really is. And when it comes to miracles, which we haven't really spoken about, and the only philosopher that I take seriously, and that's David Hume. And remember what David Hume said about miracles. No miracle should ever be believed in unless the evidence was so strong and so miraculous that it would be a miracle not to believe in it. And I'm afraid that isn't the case with regard to the resurrection of Jesus. And I can understand completely what has just been said about the comfort and the pleasure of believing in God. In fact, that's my total argument. I think it gives enormous comfort of people to have these beliefs. But that doesn't actually make God real. I'm terribly sorry about that. I'm terribly sorry that I don't want to go back all the way back to evidence again. But you really have to say that when someone says, oh yes, God really helps with love, well, that's very good. I think Christianity has done very good things. It's also done some terrible things historically. So all I would really say is, please examine your evidence with care. And really think that if you really want to believe that God created the world, then you must give up your scientific beliefs, because you're actually into the supernatural world for which there's absolutely no evidence whatsoever. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. Lewis?